guys, and welcome back to another video. So today, I believe it'll be probably the day after Honkai Star Rail has been released, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is actually I want to do some Honkai Star Rail fan art. So I've already done some sketches just very briefly, one of March 7th and a little bit of Dan Heng. So yeah, let's draw some Honkai Star Rail fan art today, and I am going to be drawing March 7th, and the reason being is that I really enjoy her character quite a bit. Now, I think as I'm doing the voiceover for today, I decided to do the filming for this entire portion and stuff a couple of days prior to the actual official release, but for the voiceover, I'm doing it the night of when the game is released, and it's only been about 2 hours of me playing the actual game, so I won't do any spoilers or anything or things that I do know about the game specifically, like character or lore wise, but I myself kind of went in more or less blind other than knowing the characters. I really like the characters quite a bit, which is kind of why I wanted to try out this game. Also, I never really played too many turn-based games. I think I've only dabbled in a little bit of FGO or Fate Grand Order just because I did a bunch of re-rolling for my brother alongside with some events where he was busy, so he wanted me to just do it because it's a little bit mindless. And first impressions of Honkai Star Rail so far is that I really do enjoy it. I do like the fact that there is kind of a auto battle feature, so it's going to help a little bit with some of the tedious battling that might occur, because it is kind of like turn-based and not kind of like the same the same mechanics of like fighting mechanics as Genshin Impact. There is kind of a difference, so I wanted to see how much time I'm going to allocate playing it. So maybe I should have said this at the beginning, Honkai Star Rail is under the same company as Honkai Impact, Genshin Impact, and Tears of Femus, and I believe there's like another game coming out like Zenless Zero or something like that. But I did want to try out this game like 100%, so I'm definitely going to give it a go. I'm not too sure if I'm going to keep up with it. We'll see how dedicated I become playing this, because my brother I don't think is going to get into the game. I'm not too sure. And it's always fun to play games when other people are excited about it, so we'll see how much I'll keep up with it on my own. But let's talk about the drawing a little bit. So I am drawing March 7th, like I said, and she's kind of like one of the few characters you get at the very beginning. She's also one of the first few characters that you meet at the very beginning of your journey during the game lore and stuff. Now, I don't remember all the terminology that the game uses per se, so I'm gonna kind of low-key avoid saying them until I get more familiar. It's kind of like the same thing with Genshin, but when I first made the fan arts for Genshin characters and just drawing Genshin characters in general, the game has been released for at least like a month or two or so, because I played the game I think a month after release, and then I didn't really start drawing them until I got more used to the characters and actually had favorites and stuff. But right now I'm kind of attached to March 7th and Dan Heng, because they are kind of like your companions at the very beginning. So I do like that, and I do like their dynamic. So yeah, we're probably gonna start off with drawing March 7th, and I might doodle her every so often. So if you're not familiar with her, she also has a very nice color scheme in my opinion, because she's kind of carrot colored, which is like very predominantly blue and pink. I've seen some references, or like I guess like in her official art she's more blue and pink, but in some other arts or kind of like her model, it's a little bit more of a warmer blue or almost like purplish color. So I'm gonna low-key have a bit of an issue doing that color when I'm actually coloring her outfit, because I kind of had two references. I had her model as well as her official art open when I was doing the drawing portion. So for the sketching part, I decided to do a very simple pose with one arm kind of behind her back and the other arm is raised and she's holding a camera. So one thing I did like, it seems like she is the type to kind of keep memories. Now, from my own little bit of research of what I've already known about the characters, I believe she also doesn't remember too much about, I think, her past, and the reason why she's called March 7th is because her birthday is March 7th, so I believe that's the reason why. Because initially when I first saw the characters, when they were first released, because I think we saw March 7th, Danheng, and I think the Trailblazer, I think that's what they're called, like basically the two main characters. Now, I'm gonna hold off from saying this, but I think the characters' names for the female is Stell, and then the male, or like, yeah, the male Trailblazer that you can play, I believe his name is, ooh, I already forget. I definitely took a screenshot at the beginning. Let me see. Let me check really quickly. There's Stell, as in like Stelle, and then we have Kalis. So that's kind of like your Lumine Ether duo. So they're mainly named whatever you named them, but they do have their own name, which is like just them as a character in general. So I think it's kind of nice that they had their own name, because when I was doing research, I believe they were called Receptacle Y and Receptacle Z, or not Z, X and Y. So Receptacle X and Receptacle Y. So I'm glad they actually have like actual names in the game. So yeah, it makes it a little bit easier for me to refer to in the future. But back to the drawing. So once I did the basic pose with kind of like my bigger painting brush and I lowered the opacity, I went ahead and did more of the details, and we can kind of do an actual real sketch on top of it, so we can flesh out details, get the clothing, get the body, hair, eyes, everything all done before we can move on to the actual painting portion, which we will be starting with the background. Now, actually, for color scheme wise, or like the atmosphere that I wanted to portray this time, was actually more of a spring vibe, as the weather where I'm currently living is very fickle. So I do live in Canada, and we usually, you know, have 4 seasons, but usually winter can start really early and end very late, which means that autumn and spring are cut either very short or it starts very, very late. And right now for spring, we've been having some warmer days, but a lot of the times that, anytime that it wants to rain, it ends up being like flurries or snow. So it's been somewhat cold every so often, and I'm just ready for spring. I'm just waiting for it. So I kind of wanted to draw more of a spring-ish looking, what is it called? Vibe, I guess, for the drawing for March 7th. So I wanted to do a blue background, a little bit of yellow behind her, and I swapped the positionings a little bit. Now, because I was kind of winging this, I didn't really have a plan. So you're gonna see me adjust the colors a little bit, and we're gonna actually fix up I don't know, adding some stuff into the background. I decided to darken the background a little bit because I did remember seeing a reference where the background was actually more of a darker, deeper blue, and the kind of like cherry blossom trees were like a very vibrant pink. So that's what I was trying to portray, but because I already painted in the clouds, I didn't want to accidentally get rid of them completely or make it too obvious that I put a overlay or a multiply layer on top of it. So I tried to fade out the clouds a little bit, but also darken up the sky so it becomes a little bit less apparent. I still think it's a little bit too abrupt of a stop, but I tried my best to also include kind of like a cherry blossom tree in the back, just so we can introduce some more colors. And I do love the combination of blue and pink quite a bit, so yeah, it's just kind of carrot side showing for the most part. But after we're done with the background, I will go ahead and actually add the colors in for March 7th. So I don't think I showed this portion, but once I was finished with the sketch, I duplicated the sketch and I have one as a kind of like a backup. So I hide that sketch layer and then leave the second one kind of visible, and I set it to multiply so that we can prep it for coloring, which is why my sketch no longer appears like dark purple. It kind of appears a lot darker, especially because I have some vibrant and darker colors behind my sketch. So that is the reason why. And it just makes it a lot easier for me to color underneath my sketch and have the sketch kind of naturally change alongside with the colors that I'm placing underneath. For me, it just like visually makes things a little bit softer, and later on I will be adjusting the colors so that they will appear softer, especially around like the face-ish area. So kind of depending on how dedicated I become to playing or keeping up with just like general information and stuff about Honkai Star Rail, I will probably continue to draw fan art of the characters, which doesn't mean that I'm gonna stop drawing Genshin characters. I still think I'm gonna probably enjoy Genshin a little bit more just because the familiarity to it. But yeah, I'm gonna kind of like flip-flop between them because Honkai Star Rail already has like a lot of characters that are already released, and I did like a general overview of looking at all of them because I was collecting references of their official art and any model pictures that I had, and put them all into PureRef just in case I want to doodle them in the future. Because I'm kind of planning on sketching quite a bit of them in my sketchbook, because now that I'm going to be starting a new sketchbook pretty soon, I know you guys are going to be seeing this video probably a week or two before I'm going to be doing the sketchbook tour, but I have finished my sketchbook. But in terms of, sorry if I'm slurring my words, by the way, I don't know why my mouth is producing so much saliva, but yeah. The sketchbook is finished, so I actually moved on to a different sketchbook, which I mentioned in previous videos that I wanted to return back to using one of my notebooks because it has thinner paper, which makes me feel a lot less pressured to draw things that are more finished or things that feel a little bit more complete or polished. So I will be probably doing a lot of sketching with graphite again. And I believe I'll talk about it in the sketchbook tour video about my thoughts about having a sketchbook where you feel like it's too precious or like a little bit too pressuring because you have good paper versus like paper that you don't mind, just having a few scribbles on and then moving on, because either the abundancy of the paper or just having the quality of the paper is kind of intimidating. So because there's so many characters in Star Rail already, I definitely want to sketch a lot of them. Like I said, I'm very attached to already March 7th and Dunhung, so I'm hopefully going to be drawing some of the other ones. Now, as I'm coloring, because I don't think there's too much to talk about for the coloring, other than the fact that I was kind of struggling with her hair color. So in the very end, I don't think her hair color is too accurate. I said this on a previous video that I struggle painting pink hair, but March 7th has a very pale pink hair color, especially for the base. But near the tips of her hair and a good chunk of just like, I don't know, the kind of main body of her hair is kind of, it gets a little bit darker and much more saturated. And I don't think I went light enough. So later on, I'll put a screen layer on top of her, like how to explain this, the crown of her head, to make it a lot lighter, which is gonna make also the highlights a little bit lighter too. But that's just because I want to match the hair color a little bit more accurately. So hopefully it'll turn out. But for the most part, in the very end, when I finish coloring and rendering and everything, I do like the illustration. She does look a little bug-eyed, but that's like my mistake for making her eyes a little bit big and not noticing where the pupils are kind of looking. I do try my best to correct it once I start to render. So hopefully it doesn't turn out too bad. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the characters that I do have currently in the game, and maybe you guys can talk about your playing experiences or just talking about the characters that you're hoping to see story-wise or you already like visually or just like anything like that. So do let me know if you guys are playing Honkai Star Rail. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions about the game or just about the characters and stuff, because I know a lot of people are super excited. And do let me know if you played Genshin Impact, Tears of Themis, or Honkai Impact prior to playing Star Rail, because I know a lot of people are returning Hoyoverse players, and then some people are just like a new batch of people being introduced to Hoyoverse's games. So yeah. Characters, right. I wanted to talk about characters. So I did do a few summons, or in this game I guess they're called warps, and I think I only did 310 warps, if that makes sense, because I'm using I believe it's like the beginner banner, whatever you want to call it. They're on discount at the moment, so I decided that, see and try my luck on it. And I currently have, I believe, Herta you get a little bit later in the game if you complete her, what is it called? Simulation universe type thing. So I do have her. I also got Sanpo. It's basically that one guy, but people thought he was like a himbo male housewife-ish character. So I have him as well. I also have Serval, just because I believe it was a gift character from doing something. I don't really remember if it's like part of... I'm trying to remember and rack my brain, because I feel like it's been so long since like pre-register for Honkai Star Rail and doing like the events and stuff prior to everything. So I don't really remember what was for what, but I do have those 3 currently. I also have, trying to think, Shushang? I don't remember if that's her name. I don't remember everyone's name entirely, but I believe I have them, and I have one more character, I believe. I think it's Asta, but I don't remember Asta is a character that you just get automatically. But I believe those are the characters that I currently have. 5 stars wise, I definitely want Bailu. I don't think I'm going to be able to get her, but I'm going to try my best to just pray and hope that I can get her from the kind of beginner's banner. And hopefully she's the 5-star. I would like Welt as well, just because aesthetically he's very much low-key my type, but we won't talk about that. Yeah, so character-wise, super excited about just meeting a bunch of the other characters. Like I said, I'm not too far into the game. I think I'm just past doing the... I don't know, I think it's like confirmation with Himeko about something. Like I said, I don't want to talk about spoilers just in case people want to get into the game. So yeah, if you guys do end up playing the game, do let me know. I'm quite interested, and hopefully in the next few streams that we talk over on Twitch, maybe we can talk a little bit about Honkai Star Rail and your opinions about it and stuff. But for the most part, I think majority of the coloring is actually finished for March 7th, so we're gonna actually do a little bit of cleanup here and there, and then change the colors for the line work, which is what I'm doing right now, or my sketch, I guess would be a better way to phrase it, so that things appear softer. Then after that, we can go ahead and merge the sketch layer and my color layer together, and we can add any blend mode effects so that we can adjust a little bit of lighting or add a little bit more shadow to make things have a little bit more form. I did forget some areas that I wanted to color and adjust, which is going to be like kind of a running thing throughout the process of today's drawing. I believe I missed some details at the very end of rendering, so I'm going to have to put those back in. But yeah, I think she turned out pretty cute though, and I want to do another drawing of her because I don't think I did her entirely, I guess like justice to her, because I do think I could draw her a little bit more accurately. But I do think the rendering definitely helps bring her character a little bit more to life. So right now I'm adding an add layer, which is going to be helping me with a little bit of the brighter light, which tends to be a little bit of rim lighting here and there. I also have to make sure to clip that to my main layer after merging everything, so that I can add kind of like a rim lighting to her, and then that'll help me also add some shadows into some places. And I kind of defaulted to the upper left to have the light source, so that I'm going to be basically putting all the shadows more or less on the bottom right of things, just to make things a little bit more consistent. And for the shadows, I am using the multiply layer with kind of more of a pale blue color. So on some of the areas, it's going to appear more purple, like in her hair, and then near the white areas, it's going to appear a little bit more blue. But just because I don't like having everything to be a little too monochromatic with that kind of blend mode, I like to alpha lock it and then go ahead and kind of almost like airbrush different colors for depending on the different areas, so I can change the color temperature a little bit to match better, so that things don't become like overwhelmingly blue or too cool or too red, like, or anything like that for the multiply layer. After that, I will merge the add layer down to the main layer, and then I'll merge the multiply layer down to the main layer. And then now we're off to do rendering and cleanup. Now, just like a quick reminder, rendering is technically not a technique. It's kind of like just the overarching term people use to describe kind of like that last finishing stages of where you're taking your piece, art-wise, I guess, kind of like to the state of being finished. And the state of being finished, or like the definition of finish, kind of is very much dependent on your preferences, or like what you deem as finished or complete. So there's not really a like surefire way for people to explain fully on what exactly is rendering in air quotes. Yeah, which is like why a lot of the time when I mention that I'm doing the rendering step, it's mostly because I usually try to tag along the other term, cleaning it up or making things look a little bit sharper, because that's pretty much what I'm doing to bring up my illustrations to finish, which tends to be cleaning up some stray lines. I'm also making sure that things appear softer, because sometimes my sketch lines become very blurry in some cases, or a little bit choppy. So I'm kind of just making sure that things look a little bit more clean, and then also just reads more better in a sense, because I don't want things to be fuzzy or, you know, it depends on your preference, because some people like that kind of like whole mess kind of look, but they're able to do it in like a very cohesive way. So their rendering step might be a little bit earlier in their work process. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not very good at explaining things, but just please remember that rendering is technically not a technique. It's basically similar to saying like coloring in a sense, but coloring can have lighting and shadows and like texture, and like there's like a bunch of different things that you can take in consideration, like value, hue, saturation. Like it's like an umbrella term for like a bunch of things. I was just taught that rendering was kind of like our final step, or like reaching our final point of our illustration and stuff. And a lot of the times, like growing up and doing art during, what is it called, post-secondary, you learn a lot that a lot of our professors really don't care about the final product as much. They care a lot about your prep work, your research and all that, or just like the steps to get to your final, like your finished product, rather than just like your finished product. Because I don't think they want you to pump out like 25 different finished pieces. They rather you have like maybe 5 finished pieces, but then have like so many things work in progress that shows growth and like your ideas, or like where your brain is going kind of thing. So yeah, take some value in just finishing some pieces, but then being able to work on a lot of different ones at the same time, so you can test out a bunch of different things without having to worry that in order to move on you need to finish a certain piece. Because I know some people have that mindset, and I used to have that mindset too, where you think in order to move on you must finish the piece that you're already working on, and you can't really move on, which kind of feels like it slows down your whole entire art journey a little bit. But there's kind of like a good balance between that and the idea of like abandoning a piece too early, because that's also a little bit detrimental to creating a habit where you might stop too early and giving up too early before giving your piece a chance. But there still is that saying that polishing a turd, no matter how much you polish it, it's still a turd kind of thing. But you won't know until you start kind of idea, if that makes sense. We use that term, like, or not term, that phrase a lot during like my university days, during like painting, especially because painting a lot of the times has like the ugly phase. So okay, so let's talk about I feel like every time I get to like the rendering and cleaning up phase, it's less things to talk about, because it's very I feel like it's like individual specific. So for me, I'm basically just gonna be cleaning up some straight lines. I'm gonna be fixing up a lot of the outlines too, which tends to be me making things a little bit darker for the line work, especially like in the face, any hair or places where 2 lines kind of meet. I like to make those places a little bit darker and kind of vary up the line width variation. Also, like here, usually when I do coloring and stuff, sometimes I don't add certain details during the general painting phase until we actually get to the rendering phase, because I know I don't want to go back and forth and do too many details before going back and doing things very specific. I do think general to specific is just a good thing to keep in mind, like for most steps of making art, even though I know some people do it very well, that they could render the whole head before moving on to the body kind of thing, or you know, you render the whole face before moving on. So I know some people have different approaches. It's just for me, I do think that general to specific helps a lot, because it'll make you have a little bit less back and forth, or at least that helps me, even though a lot of the times I don't follow that 100% completely, which does cause me to have a little bit more added time to my work. Because sometimes like you add all this detail, but then you realize you need to change maybe the overall shape of it, or you need to alter it a little bit, and it was probably easier altering it prior to doing, let's say if you wanted stripes on a shirt and you want to do the folds, you probably should do the folds first and then add the stripes, because I can't imagine doing it the other way and making it make sense, I guess. So anything that has like texture or like lines or patterning, I like to do afterwards. I don't think March 7th has really any. She does have a little bit of a stripe on the cuff of her sleeves. Okay, let's talk about the cuffs of her sleeves, by the way. If you ever looked at her design, I was like thinking, so technically at the bottom of her cuff, where it connects to the rest of the sleeve, there's like another piece of fabric, and it comes from that bottom of the cuff over top the part of the cuff closest to the hand, and it kind of like goes over it, and I think it's a very cute design and very cute if you have your hands down. But once you put your hands up, does it flop the other way? I was kind of like having a hard time thinking that maybe it would, maybe it's stitched down, I don't know. But I think in the official artwork it seems to be a little bit more flowy, so I feel like it would flop the other way, hence why I didn't put the buttons on the one sleeve on the left side, just because the button's supposed to be on the opposite, like the underneath side that's not showing. So yeah, I didn't want to include it. There's also like ribbons underneath, so I didn't include that either because technically it's being covered because her hand is up, and just because of gravity it shouldn't be exposed, or at least I don't think it should be exposed. I don't know if that's correct. It's just something that I was having trouble with, and I decided to make the decision that it would flop the other way if your hand is raised. So I'm trying to think. There's another character that I do want to draw. I think his name, I might forget his name. Is his name Jing Yuan? I think that might be his name. I don't really remember. Some of the names are very hard for me to pronounce. I also don't speak Mandarin, so even like Dan Heng's name is a little bit hard for me to pronounce, and I'm pretty sure I'm probably still pronouncing it very incorrectly. There's a few other characters in there that have more, I guess like their names originate from China, so, and I feel like all of them have more or less Mandarin pronunciation, just because I believe the entire game or whatever is more or less like done in Mandarin, so that makes sense translated wise. So but character wise, a lot of the male characters obviously I would like to draw. I've also never really seen, I don't remember his name. Arlen? It might be Arlen. I might be completely wrong. But when I was looking at a bunch of different characters, I think Arlen was one of the characters that I actually haven't seen prior to doing the research of the characters. There's like a few other ones. I think her name is Xu Shang. That is also part of that, or Shangshu. I don't remember her name. There's a few of them in there that I'm forgetting. I had their names like down pat the day that I was doing the research, but now that it's been a couple of days, I actually don't remember their names entirely correctly. And then I think that's it for the coloring and rendering phase, by the way. So right now I went ahead and duplicated the layers that March 7th was on alongside with the background and the tree, and then once I merged them, I flattened the duplicated layer, and then I erased I Gaussian blurred it, then erased the center portion so that it's kind of more in focus, and then the surrounding area for March 7th is kind of blurred. And then last but not least, I'm adding some of the effect layers, which is kind of like some petals and leaves kind of flowing across her. And I decided to throw in some petals that were a little bit more flower-like, just because I feel like it makes more sense to have those instead of just the petal shapes that I usually include in a lot of my pieces. But after that, I decided to blur all of them. Some of them I duplicated, set it to addition. And then I would also just make them have a little bit of motion blur so that we get a little bit more depth by having some stuff appear in the foreground and the background. So I think that's it for today's time lapse. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video though. I know it's been a little bit of I don't know. I don't think it's going to be too different for me drawing some of the Honkai Star Rail characters. I enjoy them, so I definitely want to explore some of their designs and actually take a closer look at some of the characters. So yeah, I think that's about it. I'll probably put a disclaimer at the very beginning because I forgot to ask you guys a question, so I'll put it at the very beginning when it appears. But like I said, there's some details that I missed, like I didn't render out her collarbone area, so I'll do that right away. And I think that's about it. I'll leave you guys just with the music and you guys can watch the rest of the video. But hopefully you guys have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!